Welcome to episode 3 of the Stat Patters podcast. I'm Andy and this is Rishi. We're brothers and we're here to bring you a weekly statistical and tactical deep dive on various topics, right? Sometimes it's United, sometimes it's throughout the larger football landscape. So, Rishi, is this the first time in months that United fans are smiling?
Yeah, probably the Leon game was the last time.
You know what? Not a bad shout, but I was actually thinking about Loserpool losing 4 in a row. Because
Oh,
for me, that's giving me somehow an extra bit of joy, right? Like the whipped cream with the cherry on top of the
yeah,
icing of the cake. Is that
yeah,
Liverpool have lost 4 in a row in the Premier League and 5 out of the last 6, by the way. So for me, it seems like a mini crisis, not just for Slot, but for the whole club. Michael Edwards, Richard Hughes, FSG. I feel like they're all minutes away from having an internal crisis meeting if they haven't had one already. I think you were saying that they were supposed to have the title in the bag before the season started.
yeah, yeah. Now they're in relegation form.
Yeah.
So we saw this a long back, right? We saw this coming. So I guess today we have to talk about why Liverpool are as bad as they are, and what we as United fans can actually take away from Liverpool's downfall.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. Because I feel like there's so much to learn by looking at other people's successes and also their failures. Because in football, there's 20 teams in the same league and we're all trying to achieve the same goal, right? We're all trying to win as many games as we can. So if you're looking at a title winning team, that a manager managed to do after coming from the Dutch league in his first season, and now they're doing so horribly, I feel like it's worth analyzing, right? So let's take a look at
Absolutely.
some underlying numbers, Rishi. I'm gonna share a table here. So this is what the actual table looks like after game week 9. So you have 9 games played here. Arsenal's on the top with 22 points. Bournemouth on 18. Tottenham, Sunderland, City, United, and Liverpool in 7th. Right? They have 15 points right now, which is the same number of points they had after game week 5 because they obviously won each of their first 5 games. And what I want to draw your attention towards is the XG, the expected goals against, and the expected points. Because according to expected points, they are still overperforming, guys. So according to expected points, they should be between 13 and 14 points right now, but they're on 15 points. Now, why is that important? It's important because they had all 15 of their points before they played the last 4 games. So imagine how bad they were to actually start the season, right? If we go back now to the actual game week 5 table, you'll see here that after 5 games they had 5 wins, 15 points like we just said, but expected points of 8.12. So they
Almost
were
double.
they were overperforming what was expected of them by 7 points. So that is essentially them having 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss instead of having 5 wins, right? And we can even go through each of the games to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about. So in the Bournemouth game, they were 4-2 with Ekitike Gakpo scoring 2 and then Semenyo scoring 2 more to make it 2-2. And then Chiesa and Salah bailed them out in the 88th and 94th minute to make it a 4-2 victory. If we look at the actual XG, it's not a million miles apart, right? 2.21 to 1.7. So they could have easily lost this game, specifically looking at the fact that both teams created the same number of big chances and both teams also took the same number of big chances.
The very next game, such a controversial game, right? Newcastle and Liverpool. uh, 10 or 12 minutes added on. Basically, the refs doing Liverpool a favor as always. They were leading 2-0, but then Newcastle did well to come back and, tie the game 2-2, even despite having like the red card for Gordon. And they needed a 16-year-old in the 100th minute to bail them out. And just take a look at this game. It was a madcap game. The XG numbers were insane. Liverpool scored 3 goals from a total XG of 0.69. How crazy is that? Newcastle, for that matter, had 4 big chances and they just couldn't convert. I guess if they had the 11th man on the pitch, they could have actually gone for it, and Liverpool would have been reflecting the kind of points that their XG numbers dictated. But again, they got lucky and refs did them a favor.
Yeah, and I just want to bring this up, by the way, that We got so much slack for being crap against Chelsea once we got our red card. But Liverpool, even with the red card, barely scraped by in this game. They're getting a lot more credit when they're not supposed to, and United are not getting the credit when they're even supposed to, right?
Andy, just take a look at the number of shots in that game. Sorry, if you could go back a minute. Liverpool just had 5 shots with 10 men against them. I mean, isn't that incredible? Why didn't no one bring this up when the match happened? Like, it seems so long ago. It was in August, couple of months back. And no one mentioned that they only had 5 shots. They were just delirious and ecstatic and saying that this is what champions do. They win the sticky games. They win when they're not playing particularly well. But if you look at 0.69 xg, it's a disaster. I feel that so early in the season they weren't even able to put any decent shots and decent chances together.
And this is with Salah, Ekitike, Wirtz, Gakpo, and Gravenberch all on the pitch. And Gravenberch scored a very good goal in this game. I remember that as well. He opened the scoring from a long shot, right? From outside
Yeah,
the box. So
yeah.
you're looking at a situation where you have all this talent on the pitch and they're getting 5 shots against 10 men. I mean, this is like essentially a sackable offense in itself. I mean, I'm obviously joking, but you guys get my point. So let's look at the Arsenal game next. Again, 0.52 xg to 0.49 xg, 9 shots to 11 from Arsenal, 3 shots on target to 1 from Arsenal, and this was essentially the haram ball derby, right? We were thinking it was going to be Atletico versus Liverpool, but the game, Atletico versus Arsenal, but this game had already happened, and Szoboszlai scored a world class free kick from like 40 yards out to pull this out of the bag for Liverpool, right? So again, another situation of squeaky bum time and them just scraping by. Then we go to the Burnley Liverpool game, and this is the only game that they actually deserve to win based on the underlying stats, because you had an xG of 2.65, and Burnley barely created anything. They had 27 shots, and arguably they didn't do well enough to finish in the game where they should have. So they win this 1-0. But the point of bringing up this game is the fact that with 2.65 xG in this one game alone, guys, they had a total xG after 5 games of 7.31, right? So you're looking at less than 5 xG being created across the other 4 games that they also won. That's the crazy thing I'm talking about. And they also, in terms of xG against, they kind of performed to expectations. But look at how many goals they overperformed by. They had 7.31 xG, but they scored 11 goals.
What's interesting about the Burnley game, if you can pull up the previous graphic again, is that if you take out the penalty, that makes the xG count at 1.89, and they got that from 26 shots. That's like 0.07, and those are pathetic shots. Look at the shot map in the shot map over here. It's just shooting from weird angles, shooting crazy shots, desperate work. And they had like
Also, where was JJ Bull talking about stupid shots from distance after this game?
yeah, rules are different for Liverpool, right?
Yeah, but no, I take your point, Rishi, that it's fair enough. Like they have even the game they create xG, and it's coming from so many shots. And then in Everton game, again, this was a 2-1 game. It's 0.9 xG to 0.7 xG, just one big chance created, and they took their big chance, and Everton didn't create any big chances. So the reason why we bring these things up, guys, because look, plenty of teams will win games without, let's say, quote unquote, deserving to win the games. But this is the title holders we're talking about. We're talking about the team that went and spent 500 million pounds this summer, and this is what they have to show for it. So Rishi, the real question now is, can Liverpool win any of their next 4 games? Because they're playing Crystal Palace in the EFL Cup, they're playing Villa in the Premier League, they're playing Real Madrid in the Champions League, and they're playing Man City away at the Etihad. So if Slot loses these 4 games, should he be fired? Is that a question we should be having?
The first question we need to ask is, how is it that a Liverpool manager has reached a situation where he could lose 9 out of 10 games and it's not even Brendan Rodgers? What the hell is Arne Slot doing? Like, why aren't these questions coming out of the Liverpool fan base? Have they even seen the fixture list? Palace in the League Cup, I think Palace are a shout for a one-off match any day. Villa, they're playing at Anfield, but I think Villa, they've had a recent uptick in
They
form.
just
They've
beat
won the last
City.
four.
They
They
just
just
beat
beat
City
City.
1-0.
Yeah, they're playing Madrid, the Champions League royalty in the Champions League. That's going to be a tough one. And I can tell you, Jabi Alonso has something up his sleeve for Arne Slot, which he has no answer to. Arne Slot has no answer to Brentford. I don't know how he is going to take apart Real Madrid, right? And Mbappe is going to have a field day against whoever they put at right back, whether it's Soboslai or they put up Frimpong. He's going to enjoy. He's going to be licking
Well,
his lips.
Vinny, you have Mbappe. That
Yeah,
team is filled with electric players, right? People who can
yeah.
put you on your backside even on their worst day. So you have one moment of lapse against them, and you're screwed.
But no one's talking about this, and no one's talking about whether Slot's position needs to be considered, right? Like I don't understand how there's more expectations on a manager who's coming from Portugal and then finishing 15th in his first 6 months, and then he has a slightly bad start of to the season, and people are calling for his head. But Slot, who has won the league, has no pressure. Like, make that make sense?
Yeah, and I actually think Jamie Carragher is not going to be calling for Slot to get sacked when he was happy to do the same thing for Rúben Amorim. And like Rishi just said, Amorim was coming from far lower expectations than someone who's just won the league. And if you lose 9 out of 10 games, guys, I repeat, 9 out of 10 games. Let's even say he wins one or two of these next few games. It's still 7 out of 10 that you have lost. That is mid-table form at best. I don't think anybody in the media is going to put pressure on him. And there are some people in the fan base, in the Liverpool fan base, from what I've heard, that would like to have Klopp back. Some are calling for Iraola. But this is the kind of stuff that you're seeing, guys. I don't think Rishi or I are actually saying Slot should get sacked. The point here is look at how the narrative is within the media, right? The narrative within the media is that we want to question Rúben Amorim because we want to put pressure on United. Because if they keep putting pressure on Amorim and United, there's a chance that INEOS gets trigger happy. There's a chance that the fans get so upset that they start protesting, and then the situation becomes untenable, and we're back to square one, right? If we reset the project clock to zero, then United are, essentially behind where they need to be consistently for even 3 more years or 4 more years or 5 more years. And sacking Slot right now does the same thing for the Liverpool project, because I'm sure they had some ideas of why they wanted to buy Isak, right? One of the best strikers in the world. There may not be an opportunity to get him in a future season, so we have to strike when the iron is hot. They felt the same way about Wirtz, once in a lifetime, like generational player at 22. If he stays here till he's 32, then that money's going to seem like chump change, right? That we paid for him. Fair enough. I understand that. Ekitike as well. Very good generational player, French international. He's going to do well for us in this team. So that's how they made these decisions. And Kirkez and Frimpong were probably more tap-ins than any of these other players, right? This was their strategy. But the problem is the club has actually let Slot down, right? Let's not mistake this in any other way than that. They have put him in a situation where he has to think about, do I have to play Salah? He's our highest earner. He's rumored to be making more than £500,000 a week. So we have to play him on the right wing. And we have to play Gakpo on the left wing because he's probably the more reasonable forward that we have that will actually do some defensive work when we ask him to. That means now we have the problem of choosing between Ekitike and Isak, and one of them has to be on the bench. And again, that's a big story because it's 100 million or something. And even when you play one of Ekitike or Isak, you need more hardworking players behind them in midfield. So now you have to bench Wirtz. And all of a sudden, you have Wirtz and Isak, your 250 million pounds, sitting on the bench, right? So, on the one hand, you understand what FSG was doing and why they did it. On the other hand, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it is such an imbalanced squad, right? And I mean, see, United got these brickbats at the beginning of the season. They all said that you don't have a midfield. Why have you brought in three forwards, right? And because the media kept saying it, we also kind of bought into it. And some of the words that were being thrown at the manager were, Bruno's not even a midfielder. Why are you playing Bruno in the 10? Why aren't you playing Bruno in the 10? But now that you've seen how Cunha and Umbomo have gotten on, you actually kind of see the wisdom in what the hierarchy was thinking and what Amorim was thinking of. But the hypocrisy of the media narrative around Amorim versus what they say about Slot is such that these questions are only thrown at Amorim. You know, uh, they ask him questions like, why doesn't he change the formation? Why is Bruno in midfield? Why isn't Kobe Menu playing? They'll even ask him stuff about Rashford. They'll ask him if he's doing well on his loan. Is there any chance of him returning? And the classic one, everyone who leaves the club performs better. So United are cursed and they don't know how to get the best out of their players. So now that Liverpool aren't doing well at all, is anyone asking Slot to change his formation? And people are saying that, fair enough. People are saying that Van Dijk and Salah, Kirk Edwards, they are not doing well. But what about Slot? When United weren't doing well, people were asking for Amorim to be removed. But what about Slot? When Liverpool aren't doing well, no one's asking for him to be removed. With United, the conversation is always that money's being spent and the players are good enough, but the coach isn't. Whereas with Liverpool, it's the players that are bad. Blame Salah, blame Van Dijk, blame Kirkes, but the coach is good. Slot spent twice as much as Amorim has spent. Explain how it makes any sense at all. I think the narrative goes like anti Amorim and pro Slot is because they know that asking for a coach to be changed is putting the club in chaos. And a united team in chaos is always good for the media because they can always feed off of it. They can get the clicks, they can make their money. But Liverpool, no, the narrative doesn't fly.
Yeah. And it's a great point, Rishi, because if we look at the actual underlying XG table, right? Again, we're going back to game week 5. Liverpool were in a situation where their system wasn't creating the chances that their forwards were actually converting. And what I mean by that is the forwards were playing out of the skin of their teeth to make Liverpool get 5 wins in a row. We've discussed each game at one by one. They were overperforming to make the system look better than it is. And look at United's situation. United are sitting in 11th, but we have created 2.5 XG more than Liverpool at that point. And actually, in terms of expected points, guys, after game week 5, we should have been 4 positions above Liverpool. And this is what the underlying numbers actually tell you, that you need to look at chance creation. You need to look at what the team is doing based on the underlying numbers to make a guess about where they're going to be by the end of the season. This is why I had made that video that was telling you guys that we could finish 4th to 6th, right? At just after the Sunderland game. So what we're seeing here, guys, is not that the system was the problem, the formation was the problem. It's that we didn't understand Amorim's system. The 3 at the back, 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1, whatever you want to call it, is not a formation that we've seen in the Premier League before, whereas Slot's 4-3-3 formation has been the most popular formation of the last 10, 15 years, right? That's how basic it is, guys. When we don't understand something, it's very easy for us to hate on it. So, guys, we need to talk about the formations because I want to put this talk to bed once and for all. Amorim's system is all about flexibility, versatility. It's all about diamonds, triangles, and having a spine to the team, right? And what I mean by that is sometimes we'll play a 5-4-1 with the wingbacks being deep and also the 2 10s joining the midfielders, and that becomes a 5-4-1. Sometimes we'll play a 4-3-3 where one of the center backs actually steps into midfield and the 2 10s become wingers. We also play a 4-2-3-1 sometimes when Bruno will actually step into the line with the number 10s and Luke Shaw or the right center back will come into next to Casemiro and become the next CDM. These are the shapes that we play both with and without the ball sometimes, right? Because the goal of the formation is to have the center backs, the left and right center back specifically, jumping into the midfield to become extra midfielders, and also the 2 10s jumping back into midfield to become extra midfielders. So it's not that he doesn't have enough midfielders. He actually has 6 midfielders, if you think about it that way, right? And it's a very fluid and flexible system that adapts to the style of the opponent. So he's a very adaptable manager. Can you imagine the analysis of Amorim was as basic as he is very rigid, he's very stubborn, he doesn't adapt, And what did he do when he went to Anfield? He adapted. What did he do when he played against Brighton? He adapted. And this is what he does, guys. So let's table this talk of formation and system once and for all. We have seen the proof behind the pudding as well, that this guy is a flexible manager. He likes to play vertical football, and his goal is to create as many chances in every game as much as possible. And that's why we've been at the top or near the top of the XG table for as long as we have.
It's unfortunate that in our industry, not just for amateurs like you and me, but even the expert analysts on TV, it's the results that lead opinion. When something isn't working, right, people just want to slag it off. They don't want to look at the underlying processes or the underlying numbers. And when something works, they want to understand why it works. So now you're looking at the attention that Amorim's system is getting, right? People are suddenly putting up those graphics of how we are such a flexible formation. Oh, it was a 4-4-2 today. You go on Twitter and someone's like, oh, you know what, today I saw that it was actually a 5-4-1. Did you guys notice this? But in this community, we always look at the process, right, at Footy with an Edge. And we could see this process happening a long back, and that's what Andy was doing through all these videos, even when we weren't actually seeing the results. And I'm just glad that the results have started coming our way, because it looks like the performances have caught up to the XG.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a case of me having a crystal ball. It's me having a case of two eyeballs, right? Because I'm just opening my eyes and looking at the game. And if you guys do the same thing, if you guys watch what we post on this channel, you will hopefully also see the truth instead of just what the media is telling you. Because you're relying on them to do the work that you can't do, because you guys have busy lives, right? You want to get on with spending time with your family, doing your work, whatever else you want to do in life, and you just have barely enough time to watch the game. So then you're spending another half an hour listening to other people talk about it. And this is the nonsense you're getting, right? That the system isn't good enough. You should play a four at the back. The DNA of United has never had a four at the back, and all this nonsense. So Rishi, enough about Liverpool, right? Those guys can go have their tears, in that corner over there. Let's talk about United, right? United fans are happy again. 3 back-to-back wins, and I believe that's the first time in 18 months we've done that, right? 3 wins in a row. And honestly, I'm sure at many points in his life, Frank Gill at the United Strand must have been wondering why he didn't put the challenge to be 3 back-to-back games instead of 5. But now he's feeling a little bit more optimistic, right? And he's a good indicator for how United fans should be feeling, because he represents what we haven't had in such a long time, right? In a way. So let's talk about the XG table. Like we talked about Liverpool. Let's see where United were after 5 game weeks, right? We were 11th, but according to expected points, we should have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We should have been 5th, but we were in 11th. So where do you guys think we are today based on expected points? On the actual table, we're sitting in 6th with 16 points. And our expected points say 15.27. So we're slightly overperforming it. But when you look at the expected points table, we should actually be one place higher. So Arsenal, City, Palace, Newcastle, United. That's what the expected points table says right now, guys.
And Andy, I'm just looking at the expected points table here. You have Newcastle on 15.98. You have us on 15.27. You have Leeds on 15.23. They're a surprise package if I've ever seen one, right? They only have 11 points, but the expected points are quite high. Would be interesting to take a look at why they've performed so well. Then you have Bournemouth on 14.31, Brentford on 14.21. So within, say, a point and a half, you got 5 teams right there. It's a very packed table. The league is, they say that this is the most competitive league, and you can see why. And if you look at third place to sixth place, it's less than a point and a half. So these are all teams that we expect to be there in the running, right, for the top 6. Palace have been really good. Newcastle are just starting to show form. Leeds are a surprise package. Bournemouth are on 18 points. The second in the table, if I'm not wrong.
They are. You can see that right here. And what's interesting, Rishi, is that if you look throughout the whole table, other than Arsenal, who should be in first and are in first, United are the most consistent team according to expected points, because we should be in 5th and we're in 6th. But you look at City, they should be in 2nd, but they are in 5th. You should look at Palace, they should be in 3rd, but they're in 10th. Newcastle, they should be in 4th, but they're in 12th. Even at the bottom, right? You have Bournemouth who are in second, but they should actually be in seventh. Tottenham should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
11th.
Tottenham should be 11th, but they're third, guys. This is how crap Thomas the Tank Engine is playing them, right? And then Sunderland too. They should be like near the bottom of the table, but they're in fourth, right? So we're not here to begrudge Sunderland or what Tottenham are doing. But the point is, the expected points table more or less doesn't lie. And we are the most predictable team based on the underlying numbers, because it seems like we have reverted to the mean in just a matter of 4 games from game week 5.
And Andy, there's more to pay off because we are on we are on 16 points right now, whereas the expected points are 15.27. But look at the expected goals. We are expected to score close to 18 and a half goals, but we only scored 15. We are underperforming our expected points, or slightly overperforming our expected points. But if you look at our expected goals, we are still underperforming that. So there'll be a game or two when we overperform, and it's possible that we leapfrog and we outperform our expected points too, because we've scored more goals in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And the trend, right? I've looked through the expected goals against on consecutive games, and the trend is definitely getting better, right? And the reason is that the players are executing the system a lot better. And again, the reversion to the mean for the expected points started when the players started executing the system well. That's what we were saying, guys. When we looked at it in game week 5 and 6, we said Amorim is not the problem. The system is not the problem. The players are not clicking together. The players are not putting the ball in the back of the net. As soon as they started fixing those problems, like we said in high definition 1080p, looks like things are back again and things are rosy again. So Rishi, we've talked about why Liverpool are in the position they're in, how the numbers have told us this was coming a lot before it actually started coming, and what that tells us about how we should react to United, right? Because Slot shouldn't be sacked right now because that'll be way too rash, and you're not giving him a chance to fix the big problems that they have. Just the same way we didn't want Amorim to be sacked, right? And who was the first person from within the club to come and back him, even though it was way too late? Who was the first person to do it? It was Sir Jim Ratcliffe, right? He came out and said we should give him 3 years. And that was like 2 weeks ago, guys. That was, I think, before the Liverpool game at the international break. And we thought he was smoking something very strong to
It
be
was
saying
right
something like
after
that.
that Brentford game where everyone started calling for Amorim's head. It was like in a very vulnerable moment, and now that you look back at it, what a well-timed backing it was, right? Because now we've gone on and won three in a row.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely. And
props.
and the same way that I like to take credit for my prediction that United are going to finish in fourth, I'm sure INEOS feels really good about coming out and doing that, right? Because look at us now, right? You guys thought we were crazy for giving him 3 years, but looks like we were right to do that. And giving him at least till the end of the season now doesn't seem like a crazy thing, does it? So,
Right.
Rishi, maybe there's something to be said about giving INEOS some of their flowers, and we have to be very careful when we do this because we're not buying any INEOS t-shirts and sleeping in INEOS underwear anytime soon. But we need to give them their flowers. So walk us through a little bit about how we got started with INEOS in the first place and what the narrative was around them versus the Qatar ownership.
Right. So first up, I'm not going to give INEOS their flowers. I'm going to give them maybe a few petals of one flower. Okay, because when they came into this club, how did they start? What was the narrative around their ownership before the results started showing? Uh, they're hiring at the very top, and they're firing at the very top. uh, very uh, questionable decisions like hiring Ashworth, the whole saga around him, the standoff with Newcastle, the decision to sort of back Ten Hag after he won the FA Cup, where in hindsight, I think it was best if he had let him go because the form has really dropped in the league, and the league is the bread and butter, right? So they backed Ten Hag, they brought in Ashworth, and within 5 months, they had sacked both Ten Hag and Ashworth, right? They brought in Amorim, and when his system depends on midfield and wingback signings, what did they do? They didn't buy him a single midfielder. and they bought him one wing back who was a 20-year-old, just turned 20 when they bought him, who had a season and a half with a relegation battling team in Serie A, right? So that's like two things against them. They were also held ransom by the bomb squad. You had people who were clearly told that they're surplus to requirements, they're not welcome at the club anymore, and those guys didn't leave till deadline day, and that affected spending a lot because it meant that you couldn't get Sheshko in preseason, and also you brought in Lomans after we had already lost crucial games, like we were out of the Carabao Cup. uh, we also lost that game against Arsenal where we could have at least held on for a draw, right? Because that goal came from a binder mistake. So uh, there was also the Brentford game, which I think we could have at least drawn at the very minimum, or even won. If a couple of things had gone our way and if Lomans was in goal that day. So, uh, Sir Jim, to his credit, after all these things that went wrong, he came in and he backed Amorim after the Brentford game. So I'll give him some props for that. And the other thing, which I think, Andy, you had mentioned that the kind of recruitment that they brought in, despite not getting in the kind of wingbacks and the midfielders we wanted, you said you were very happy with the kind of forwards that he had brought in.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the thing I like most about Brian Mbumo is, he's Cameroonian, but I think he was born in France. He's half French, half Cameroonian, but he doesn't have any of the bad habits that I've seen other French players have, for example, right? But Mbumo seems like the most humble, down to earth guy that I've ever seen come into United in the last 13 years since Sir Alex retired, right? Every big money signing or big ego player that comes into the club seems to have this like aura around them where they feel like they're larger than life. They feel like the dancing on social media, all the things that Graham Souness used to complain about. Um, it seems to be the feature of their sort of personality, right? Not a bug. Whereas what we've seen after dealing with all these players is that it actually is a bug, right? We need somebody who comes in, who just focuses on the football, has no noise off the pitch, is ideally a family man, and also the numbers are really good, right? Because we don't just want good people to come in, we also want good players to come in, right? So you look at Mbumo, he had 20 goals and 8 assists in the Premier League playing for Brentford, guys. That is amazing stuff, right? And he played 2 seasons for them in the championship as well. So this is the type of player that is used to grafting for a lower level team, having to claw and scratch through victories against big teams. And the same with Mateus Cunha, right? He must be the most humble Brazilian man in the Premier League because he's played as a flair player, somebody who, what expressions called him the Brazilian Josh Denzel. And that's a really funny comparison because he does look like somebody who would be like on Love Island or something, right? But he's just keeping it so calm. He's keeping it so focused on the football. The work he did in the Liverpool game seems to have a relatively quiet off the pitch life for a flair Brazilian player, right? We only need to look at Neymar and what he did every February when his sister's birthday came around in terms of his injuries. But the point is, we're looking for Premier League proven players that have overperformed their numbers, that seem to have a good life off the pitch. They really want to come to United, and we're really getting the most value for our money because maybe we felt like Brian Mbumo was too much money when we first signed him. Maybe we felt like Mateus Cunha, 62.5 million, is a little bit too much money. Is anybody thinking that right now? Nobody is questioning it. And this is the power of getting a few transfers right. Forget about getting all of them right, because I think they hit the nail on the head with this transfer window, right? They got Mbumo right. They got Cunha right. Senna Lomans, we could do a whole podcast just talking about him, and it'll just be us like bowing down to a poster of Lomans just claiming a high claim, right? Outside his box or outside the net. And I feel like comparing that to the likes of Anthony, Sancho, Rashford, Garnacho, these are all players that we've dealt with. Every single one of these factors that I mentioned have been negative or really bad with those guys, right? Rashford thought he was bigger than the club. Garnacho thought he was bigger than the club. Sancho thought he was bigger than the club. And Anthony, towards the end, when he was demanding the money and then going and crying in a press conference for Real Betis, also at some point thought he was bigger than the club. So all of these guys have been taken out, and we have replaced every single one of them. Let's not forget Onana, by the way. We've replaced every single one of these 5 players with better players. And now we're looking like a team that is unrecognizable in the best way possible.
Andy, I just want to take you through the list of INEOS buys. So you'll start with Euro, young, talented, upcoming centre back wanted by Real Madrid, right? That's the kind of player you want to go for. And a lot of things were said about his 50 million plus 12 million euro purchase price, but I think that's a bargain. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I think given how young he is, and if he stays here till he's 27, 28 at least, that's an absolute bargain. I mean, let's not forget, Man City played 50 million for John Stones like so many years ago, right?
Yeah.
And they kept him, and at that time it seemed like a lot of money. And so if you're talking so many years later for a young 19-year-old French center back that Real Madrid wants, I would say that's really good investment.
Yeah, then you have Mazraoui, who along with Delict, right? These two just came in and immediately started delivering. At most points, they were our most consistent players, and I think for a lot of United fans, Delict is a big shout to be player of the season so far. We got both of these combined for 65 million euros, and as brilliant. I mean, I don't understand who's making these decisions at Bayern, because for Delict, 60,000 Bayern fans signed a petition to not sell him. Can you imagine that? We can't even get 60,000 people to turn up for a protest against the Glazers. And Bayern had 60,000 fans signing a petition to keep Delict. That's how good he is. And we got him for 45, 50 million euros, I think, all in.
And he has that je ne sais quoi, right? He has that fight for the badge mentality of like he wants to be there, he wants to win every duel, he wants to give it out all on the pitch, and he does it. He never seems like he wants to shy away from anything because Delict, guys, let's not forget, he was the captain of the Ajax team that Ten Hag took to the semifinals, and they lost by like a small margin to Tottenham to not make it to that final.
Yeah.
So this guy's been a leader. He's 20, 25, 26 now. He's been a leader for 8-9 years already. So that's the other thing, right? They're bringing in leaders. You talked about Euro, you talked about Mazraoui, you talked about Delict. We brought in Cunha, Mbumo, Sheshko, Lomans. These are all leaders. And now when you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 signings that INEOS have made so far, arguably the only ones that haven't been, let's say, up to our expectations are Ugarte, Xerxes, and Dorgu, right? These are the only 3 that you can point at and have any questions about. That's a hit rate of 70%, guys. Do you think Liverpool would take a hit rate of 70% with their signings right now?
Dorgu's just turned 21. So he's young. He still has a lot of time on his side.
Yeah, and Xerxes is probably the only miss so far. And Ugarte, again, it's hard to say with Ugarte because he's also fairly young, right? He's like 23, 24. And even if we want to sell him right away, which I don't think we should do because we need the squad depth, even if we do want to sell him right away, we probably get 25 to 30 million back for him, right? So it's not the biggest loss in the world. You compare that to Anthony, we bought him for 90 and we're selling him for 20, right? You compare that to Sancho, we bought him for 75, 80, and we still haven't sold him. Garnacho, we arguably should have sold him for 60, but we sold him for 40. And Rashford, again, I think he's got a clause with Barcelona for like very cheap money, right? If they want to purchase him after the loan.
30 million euros.
What we're seeing is players that want to come to United, that are happy playing for the badge, and they're happy playing for the club. And you can see the excitement in their eyes, guys. I think I was listening to Talk of the Devils podcast, and they were talking about Mateus Cunha receiving the Man of the Match award for the game against Brighton. And then the Mexican journalist, they wanted to interview him, and they asked him if they could give him the Man of the Match again, which usually doesn't happen, right? One network gives it to you and then it's done. But I think he got it 3 separate times that game because he was so happy for to be rewarded on television. And I get it, right? It's a Spanish coverage, so there's people that probably support him back home that maybe don't speak English or things like that want him to see that want to see him do well. And so I understand the excitement. And you look at Mbumo and Ahmad like dancing in the dressing room after the game.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that we want to see come out, right? This is not just Jesse Lingard and Paul Pogba dancing after we've lost 4-0. This is us celebrating a big victory against a team that we lost 7 out of the last 8 games against. I think everything is trending in the right direction. And like Rishi said at the start, INEOS deserves 2 or 3 petals off of one flower in one bouquet that we want to give them, right? We want to give them the bouquet, and we want to give them more bouquets, and we want to go on this great run together. Because honestly, I don't think if it says INEOS or it says Qatar on the cover of the book. We just want the team to get back to the glory days. Ideally, also Glazers eventually have to sell, but to do all of that, we need to start somewhere, and INEOS have made the right start. So guys, if you're still watching, we have a treat for you, because we want to do this as a recurring segment every week now, where we talk about the underrated players of the week, right? So these are basically hidden gems that maybe you guys don't really know about. And in some cases, they might be the players that United has to go after. In some places, they might just be the standout player that Rishi's noticed. And then I'll give my standout player of the week as well. So hopefully this adds to your knowledge in terms of like underrated ballers that are out there, basically, right? And so if you can give us like 5-7 minutes more of your time, we'll hopefully entertain you with something that you haven't heard about before. Rishi, take it away.
So my underrated gem of this week is someone that I saw while I was doing the Liverpool hate watch against Brentford. And I saw this kid who was built like an absolute tank, who was stopping everything that was going past him or trying to go past him. And my player is, drum roll, Michael Coyote, 21-year-old right back, Italian international. Brentford signed him in January of this year, and he actually played 12 games in the previous season. Andy, can you pull up his
Yeah, I got
Potmob
it here.
page? If you can just take a look at his performances, he's been quite consistent. Look at his ratings. A few games at 6.5, 6.3, but that's kind of to be expected from a young player, and also from a team like Brentford that is somewhat a middle of the park sort of a team, right? So he averages 7 on Potmob. So that's all you need to know. If someone is getting 7 on 10 average performances, he's a good player and he's doing a great job in this season.
And Rishi, I just want to point out as well, it's the big games where he really seems to shine, because they beat Aston Villa 1-0. His rating was 7.6. They drew 2-2 to Chelsea, rating 7.2. They beat United, rating 7. They beat West Ham, 8.1. They beat Liverpool, 7.7, right? So every single one of the games where they've won or they've drawn, he has had a really good game. Right. So that tells you that he's almost a leading indicator. If you look at Coyote and he's had a good game, Brentford have probably done pretty well.
So I'll just take you through Coyote's game against Liverpool. He had 87% pass accuracy, 2 chances created, 6 defensive contributions, 6 out of 6 duels won, including one aerial duel, 2 touches in the opposition box. So he can carry the ball out of difficult areas. There was one particular sequence I remembered watching in the game where he picked up the ball on the right flank, and it was at the halfway line. He carried it 50 yards across the pitch to the left half space into the box, driving past 6 Liverpool players, and then he laid it off to the left winger. That was an amazing sequence of moves, and he did that all by himself from the right flank to the left half space. You know, he's a pretty good ball carrier. And the thing is, you can't dribble past him, you can't shoot past him because his body positioning is quite great. And for a 21-year-old right back, if he's got these basics good, it means that he's picked up the right habits as a youngster, and that's very promising for a defensive player.
And he reminds me of a stereotypical Arteta right back, right? Somebody who he wants to be like strong and tough. And it's in the similar mold of maybe like a Tomiyasu, right? Where he doesn't look like silky on the ball. And I know Tomiyasu is a little bit taller, but he's the type of player that will not make a lot of mistakes, right? He'll keep it simple. And I think he has a great long throw on him as well. Like he's the
Yeah,
one taking the long
yeah,
throws for Brentford.
yeah. He's got a
So
cannon on him.
Arteta's gonna love this guy if he wants to purchase him. But
Yeah.
I think in terms of the team that this guy would suit, I was thinking of Newcastle, right? I feel like Eddie Howe would love a player like this that can just keep it tight, play against some of the best left wingers in the world, and consistently give him a 7 or 8 out of 10 every week. And Eddie Howe has been good at developing these players, right? I think Brentford, I don't know how much they will sell him for, but if they can get a good price on him, this seems like a player that will not have a big ego. He'll come in, he'll know how to graft, and he will know how to play well in big games. So I think that's a very good shout, Rishi, and thanks for sharing that. Now let's move on to my player, and we're going to talk about Noah Siddiqui. This guy played against us as well a few weeks ago when we beat them 2-0, and he didn't really stand out. But what's impressive is that they are second in the table, and this guy has started and played almost every minute of every game that they've played. I think across 9 games, you have 810 total minutes available. He has played 802 of them. Man has spent less than a minute a game off the pitch, right? And he has a rating of like almost 7.0 as well, much like Coyote. And look at his performances, guys. He doesn't have a single goal or an assist, but across every single game, much like Coyote, they beat West Ham 3-0. He had 7.1. They beat Brentford 2-1, 7.1. Draw against Palace, 7.0. Draw again, 6.7. Then win again, 7.3. The game they lost is his worst performance according to this, and also Burnley, right? Those 2 games. Then he has 7.4, and then Chelsea game he had a 7.7. If we go take a look at his statistics in that game as well, he was pretty good, right? He was player of the match. He had the least touches off the ball while still being player of the match, right? And they're playing with like 30-40% possession in this game, but they still managed to do really well. 90% pass accuracy, 1 chance created, 11 defensive contributions, 2 successful dribbles, 1 accurate long ball, and you're looking at him winning 5 out of 6 of his ground duels, right? So this is not the second coming of Moises Caicedo. I'm not saying this is a player that goes for 100 million, but if you're looking to move further up the table, right? Let's say going from a Sunderland to a Brentford, or going from a Sunderland to a Brighton, or going from a Sunderland to a Fulham, this is exactly the type of player you want to be looking at, because he's going to work hard. He's only 20 years old. And I can bet your bottom dollar he's going to move either at the end of the season if Sunderland are at risk of getting relegated, or within the next season or 2 for somewhere between 40 to 60 million euros. Rishi, who do you think, which team do you think suits this guy?
I was just looking at him, and I think if West Ham managed to stay up, I think a coach like Nuno would absolutely love him, and he would develop him quite well. To be fair to Regis Labrie, I think he's doing a bang up job at Sunderland. So I don't know why Siddiqui wouldn't just stay there, be a regular starter, spend the next couple of seasons at least, because you never know how a cycle turns out, right? They've spent big. Maybe for the next couple of years, they stay in the league. By the 3rd season, something happens, things are falling apart. And maybe that would be a good time for Siddiqui to consider that maybe it's time to move on. But right now, I think he's doing a great job at Sunderland. And he's playing well under this coach. Labrie is doing a great job. I think his points per game haul in the Premier League is better than his points per game haul in the Championship last season. So this is a coach who is also growing along with the team, right? So that's a brilliant environment for a young 20, 21-year-old midfielder to find himself in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the general point I was coming from is that you'll get a lot more money if he makes the move, and there's a lot more security of staying in the Premier League if you play for Fulham, for Brentford, for Brighton, right? Those types of teams. But yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say he has to leave Sunderland or anything like that. But that's it, guys. That's our 2 underrated players of the week. We have Noah Siddiqui from Sunderland, and we have Michael Coyote from Brentford. What do you guys think? Do you have any underrated players of the week that you want us to talk about? Get your thoughts in the comments down below. We have talked about how the Liverpool crisis informs us how we should feel about United. And I know that's a weird way to get to that discussion, but I think it's an important conversation to have, because people seem to overreact when the results are not going the way they want them to, and they seem to attack things that they don't understand. Right now, they don't understand how Slot could not be doing well, because they think the 4-3-3 system works and there shouldn't be anything wrong with it. Whereas the truth is, it's the formation we're thinking about being the same as the system, and Slot is actually not. Slot's system is at fault in some ways, and the club is also at fault for putting him in this situation, for disrupting a title-winning team in the way that they did. So let's keep our eyes and ears open to form our opinions about our clubs, and be more measured and actually look at the data before we make our minds up. That's it for today, guys. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.